Good morning, everybody. Check. Now you're
Now you can hear me okay?
praise God.
Praise God for
It is a
it is a
good
good
time
time
of
of worship,
focus
focus
on
on
God's
God's faithfulness,
and all
and all
the
the
testimonies
testimonies
we
we heard
heard
also,
about how
how
good
good God
God
is,
is, and He's with
He's
us
with us
always.
always,
He hears
He
us
hears us
always.
always.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah,
so
today
yeah,
we
today we
will
will
continue
continue on
on
the
the study of
study of
the book of
the book of
Genesis.
Genesis.
Uh, we
We
will
will
aim to
aim to
cover
cover
three
three
chapters.
chapters, and sometimes in the office, there's a
P1
P1
incident.
incident.
People
People get into a war room.
and then the
And the
manager
manager
says,
says,
we're not
going
going
to
to leave
leave
here
here
until
until
it's
it's
fixed.
fixed.
Okay. Which
Which
means
means
you
you
might
might
have
have
to
to
keep
keep
sitting
sitting
for
for
hours
hours
and
and
hours.
hours.
So
So today we won't even have to finish three chapters.
Okay.
Last week when
we
he attempted to deep especially one part.
So pray
So
for
pray
me
for
and
me
pray
and
for
pray for
yourselves
you.
also. Okay. All right.
Alright.
So if you
So
can
if you
turn
can
your
turn your
Bible
Bible
to
to
Genesis
Genesis
25,
25,
27.
27. I hope some of you have been able to read it.
We
We will stay on these three
chapters
chapters today.
And we'll take a slightly different approach to digging deep into this. Now, the background for this, so last week we saw how Isaac and Rebecca got together, right? God's plan, and how God chose Rebecca for Isaac. And both of them submitted to God's choice, to God's will for them. They had never even seen each other or spoken to each other before that, but they trusted in God and moved ahead to get married. Now, as chapter 25 starts, it starts with Abraham fading out. It starts by saying Abraham lived 175 years, and then he died. And he talks about Ishmael. Ishmael lived 137 years, and he passed away. So it's
So
a
it's a
transition,
transition.
right? And it
It
sets
sets
the
the
stage
stage
for
for
focus
focus
on
on
another
another
family.
family.
Right? Now, all these
All
three
these three
verses,
verses,
it
it
focuses
focuses
on
on one family.
which family
Which
is
family
that?
is that?
Isaac.
Isaac. Right?
Isaac's
Isaac's
family.
family.
So
So Isaac and Rebekah,
and the
the two
two sons,
sons,
Esau
Esau
and
and Jacob.
Jacob. So
This is the focus.
So what
So
we'll
what
do
we'll
today
do
is,
today is,
through
through these
three
three
chapters,
chapters,
we'll
we'll try to do a little bit of a behavior study, deep dive on each of these four characters
in
in this portion.
So we'll
So
try
we'll
to
try to
understand
understand
their
their
psyche a
psyche a
little
little
bit,
bit,
why they
why they behave the way they did, how they took their decisions, what drove their decisions, what their behavior patterns are, what their are, and what we can learn from.
So
As we look at all of this, let's
let's
keep our heart and minds open to what God will want to speak to each one of us about our behaviors, our mindset, what drives our decisions,
and
all of that.
So
And so, because we look at a lot of for different people, God will speak to us
in
different ways,
each
each
of
of
us
us.
in different ways. So
So let's just pray as we start. Pray that God will open our heart, speak to each one of us, Lord, in a very, very personal way.
So
So let's just pray. Lord Almighty, Father God, we come before you, Lord, this time and as we look into your word and we desire to study your word, understand your word, Lord. Lord, Holy Spirit, I pray you speak to each and every person sitting here today in a very, very personal way. I pray that you convict each of our hearts, Lord, and that you open our hearts and minds to hear and understand what you want to say to us.
In Jesus'
In Jesus' name, I pray.
Amen. All right.
All right.
So we'll
So let's
start
start
with
fast.
right? So God
So God
chooses a
chooses
wife
a
for
wife
Isaac,
for Isaac,
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Isaac has
Isaac
faith
has
in
faith in
God,
God,
so
so
Isaac,
Isaac,
he
he
doesn't
doesn't
speak
speak
anything
anything
against
against
his
his
father
father.
Abraham. He says, whatever you decide, I'm good with it. So he's about 40 years when he gets married, right? So Isaac does have faith, right? He demonstrates that through his life, through his marriage, and after that also. Now, soon after they get married, they realize that Rebecca is barren. Right? Now, this was God chose both of them. God
God
put them
put
both
them both
together,
together,
but they
but they
realize
realized
that
that
Rebecca is
Rebecca
barren.
is.
Now,
Now,
how does
how does
Isaac
Isaac
respond?
respond?
So we
So
read
we read
about
about
this.
this.
Genesis
Genesis
25:21
25:21
says,
says,
and
and
Isaac
Isaac
prayed to
prayed
the
to the
Lord
Lord
for his
for his
wife
wife
because she
because
was
she was
barren.
barren.
So it
So it
doesn't say
doesn't
that
say that
Isaac
Isaac
was
was
discouraged or
discouraged or
disappointed or
disappointed. Or
frustrated. He didn't say,
he said,
God,
God,
what is
what
this?
is
I
this?
thought
I
it
thought
was
it
your
was your
plan and all
plan
of
and
that.
all
I
of
thought
that.
you
You
chose her.
chose her.
What is this?
This,
None of
none
that.
of that.
He
He
says,
says,
and
and
Isaac
Isaac
prayed to the
prayed to the
Lord for his
Lord for his
wife
wife
because she was
because she was
barren.
barren.
And the
The
same
same
verse it
word,
says, and the
and the
Lord
Lord
granted his
granted his
prayer,
prayer.
and Rebekah, his
Rebecca, his
wife,
wife.
conceived. So how
So
many
how
times
many
do you
times
think
do
he
you think he
prayed?
prayed?
From this
From this
verse,
verse
once.
once.
So in
So in
reality,
reality,
this
this
verse
verse
contains,
contains,
can you guess
can you
how
guess
many
how many
years?
years?
The
The
first part
first
of
part
this
of this
verse
verse,
and the
the
second part
second
of this
part,
verse, when it
when
says
it says,
he
he
prayed,
prayed,
he
he
started
started
praying,
praying,
and
and
when Rebecca conceived.
he,
So that
so that
gives us a
gives us a
clue. If you
clue.
look
If you
at
look at
verse 20, it
it
says
says,
Isaac
Isaac
was
was
40 years
40
old
years
when he
old
got
when he
married.
got married.
Verse
Verse
26,
26,
how old was
what was
Isaac
that?
there? You can look into your Bibles. 60.
60.
So
So
20
20
years
years
between the
between the
start of
start
this
of this
verse and the
verse
end
and
of
the end
this
of this.
verse. So how
So
many
how
times
many
did he
times did he
pray?
pray?
Not
Not
once for
once for
sure,
sure.
right? Probably
Probably
many,
many,
many
many
times.
times.
No
No
mention of
mention of
being
being
discouraged
discouraged
or
or
saying, God,
saying,
what
God,
is
what
this?
is
Where
this?
are
Where are
you?
you?
Why aren't you
Trying to
here?
hear me.
No
No
mention of
mention also of
shortcuts
shortcuts.
and thinking,
Thinking,
okay, if
okay,
God
if
doesn't
God doesn't
answer, let
answer,
me
let
try
me
to do
try to do
something on
something
my
on
own.
my own.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Just this
Just this
one
one
verse
verse
here.
here.
These three
These three
chapters, there's a
chapters, there's a
lot in
lot.
it. Right? So
So
as we
as we
go,
go,
a
a
lot will
lot
get
will get
unpacked, and I'm
unpacked, and
sure
I'm
God
sure
will
God
speak
will
to each
speak
one
to
of
each one
us.
of us.
So
So
this
this
one
one
thing
thing
here,
here,
the
the
first
first
aspect of
aspect of
Isaac's
Isaac's
behavior,
behavior,
we see
we
that
see
he
that
was a
he
man
was a
of
man of
prayer. He was a
prayer.
man of intercession. He was a
He was
man
a
of
man of
patience. Right?
patience. Right?
He
He
prayed
prayed
without
without
ceasing. He
ceasing. He
prayed
prayed
for
for how much
long it
long.
took. And in the
And in
end,
the end,
God
God,
answered. Right? Because God
God,
hears, God answers. All right.
alright.
So we'll
So
keep
we'll
our
keep our
pace
pace
going,
going.
okay? Because we have to cover all of
Cover
this.
all this.
Now, soon
Now, soon
after that,
after that,
there's a
there's a
famine in the
famine.
land. Just like
Just like
his
his
father's
father's
time,
time,
Abraham's
Abraham's
time,
time,
also there
also
was a
there was a
famine in the land.
land.
Uh,
Uh,
just
just
like
like
Abraham,
Abraham,
Isaac
Isaac
also
also
moved
moved
south
south
to a
to a
place
place
called
called
Gerar.
Gerar.
That's
That's
a
a
Philistine
Philistine
place
place
south of
out of
Canaan.
Canaan.
It's a fertile place, and that's
That's
why
why
in the time
in
of a
time of a
famine,
famine,
there's
there's
food there
food there.
because it's fertile place,
Fertile.
close to
Close to
the
the
coast,
coast.
apparently. So now,
Now,
uh, was
was
this is
this
now
now
in chapter
chapter
26,
26,
the
the
beginning
beginning
of
of
chapter
chapter
26. Now there
Now
was a
there was a
famine in the
famine in
land
the land,
besides the
the
former
former
famine that
famine.
was in the days of Abraham. And
And
Isaac
Isaac
went to
went to
Gerar
Gerar
to
to
Abimelech,
Abimelech,
king of the
king of the
Philistines.
Philistines.
Now,
Now,
we don't know
we
if
don't
it's the
know if it's
same
the same
Abimelech as
Abimelech as
Abraham or
Abraham
his
or
son, but it's the
it's the
same name.
same name.
Maybe it's the
Maybe it's
same,
the same.
uh,
Uh,
or maybe it's the
or
same.
maybe it's
Now,
now
here,
here
God
God
meets with
meets with
Isaac.
Isaac.
Now, God
Now
had given
God
a
had given a
promise to
promise to
Abraham,
Abraham
right, about
about
descendants and all of
descendants and
that.
all of that.
Isaac hadn't
Isaac hadn't
personally
personally
received that
received that.
promise. Isaac
Isaac
believed it
believed
because
it because
Abraham
Abraham
would have told him.
told him
He knew he
he
was
was
a chosen person for God's plans. But now that Isaac and his family are in a foreign land, perhaps there's some doubts, God chooses to come and speak to Isaac himself. And if you read this, God kind of reinstates the promise directly to Isaac. So, verse 2, can one of you read, please, verses 2, 3,
4. Yeah, 2, 3, 4.
Abraham your father. And I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give to your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed.
Yeah, thank you. So the same promise that Abraham got, God comes and says, okay, stay in this place, right? This Philistine place that you are, don't go to Egypt. I'm with you. My protection is with you. Your descendants are going, and he talks about his descendants. He talks about his seed, also the promise, right? So he's got this promise, grand promise. 2 verses after that, what happens? Isaac lies to the people around about his relation with Rebecca. Why? Fear that what will happen. It's written in that verse 9. That they will kill him. Just some time back, what did God tell him? Your descendants, this land is yours, your descendants, your seed will come from you. I am with you, my protection is with you, don't go anywhere, stay here, I'm with you. It didn't take long, right? It didn't take very long for a man of faith. We saw that, Isaac was a man of faith, was a man of prayer. Why did he respond like this? Very, very strange response, right? This is not the response you'll expect. Now his father also responded similarly. That's a different thing. We're not looking at that now. But it's a very interesting response, right? So what do you think caused this? And that too, he suddenly loses faith very dramatically, drastically, right? So you see, there's a principle at play here. It's fear can eat into faith. This is a spiritual principle. Now, we may be people who believe in God. We have faith in general in God and all of that. We may have received a promise that we're standing on. But fear, if both fear and faith cannot coexist in our minds, right? If fear comes in, then faith slowly starts going out, right? And that's what happened here. When fear came in, fear started influencing the way he was looking at situations, the way he was taking his decisions. So you see, fear can influence, even we, people who are believers, fear can influence our decisions. And a decision influenced by fear is always the wrong decision. And that's why, uh, this is a choice that needs to be made every time. So it's not like a one-time thing where, okay, I have faith, and that's the end of it. No, every day we come across situations that demand this choice. And this option of faith versus fear is something that we have to make every day. So this is something that we should be conscious about. There's another example in the New Testament. You can think of anybody like this a man of faith, suddenly fear. Peter, yeah, very good. So what happens with Peter? Very, very similar, right? He just declares his unwavering support to Jesus Christ and says, I will die for you. It didn't take very long after that, just on the same day perhaps, right? Where he disowns, he says, I don't even know this person. Why? Fear of death. He just said, I'm willing to die for you. But now fear of death says, I don't even know who you're talking about. I don't know this person, right? You see how even to the best of people, fear can kick faith out. But the good thing is, the inverse is also true, right? Faith can kick fear out. So all that we have to do at this time is to bring faith back in. When we look at our God, like we sang today, we remind ourselves of God's faithfulness, of what He's done in the past for us, of how big our God is. That's how we kick fear out, right? You see, fear is often, the what if of our imagination. What if this happens? What if this goes wrong? What if my plans don't happen? But what we have to realize is faith is the even if of our conviction, of our belief. Where faith says, even if this happens, God is in control. Even if it doesn't go according to my plan and the worst happens, I still know that God is in control. I can rest in assurance, right? And fear often wonders if God is going to show up. A situation where we feel helpless. Fear wonders, is God going to show up? But that's where faith reminds us that God never left in the first place, right? He's been walking with us. He is always walking with us. Sometimes we don't remember that. Sometimes we don't realize that. But it's important to realize that this faith versus fear is something that every person here sitting has faced, will continue to face till the end of our lives. But this is something that we can overcome if we are conscious about the fact that fear is coming in. We can lift up the shield of faith, right? That's why we read that faith is a shield. So choose faith over fear every time a situation comes up, right? So this is one of the mindsets we learned from Isaac about faith over fear. All right, we move ahead now to the next character. So because we're looking at characters, we'll keep going up and down the portions. Okay, so we may. I'm not going in sequence in the portion. I'm going by character. So the next person we look at is Esau. All right. Each of these people have very, very profound things to tell us, actually. So there's a lot here for us to unpack today. All right. So Esau. Now, if you've read this portion, how was Jacob and Rebecca's parenting? There was one flaw in their parenting. Any guesses? Partiality. Yeah. Partiality. So if you can read 25:28. What does it say? 25:28 says that.
And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Yeah, very clear. The Bible doesn't hide that. The father loved one, the mother loved the other, right? And both of them were very partial. They showed a lot of favoritism. Uh, Now we'll see later again. So when Rebecca was conceiving, she got this prophecy, right, that the younger would rule over the older. And I'm sure she told Isaac, I'm sure Isaac knows as well. But we see later that Isaac tries to give the blessing to Esau, right, because he likes Esau better. And then Rebecca intervenes and tries to. God is sitting and watching all this from. He says, I gave the prophecy, I can fulfill it, right? But one is trying to give it to one, the other is trying to scheme and give it to the other. Very, very interesting family. Yeah. Uh, all right. Uh, so, so in chapter 25, verse 29 to, one of you can just read this, 29 to 34. This is the place where the portion where where Esau gives up his birthright. So let's kind of deep dive into that a little bit and see what really happened there. So can one of you please read that portion 29 to 34?
Sure. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came into the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of the red stew, for I am exhausted. Therefore, his name was called Edom. Jacob said, Sell, sell me your birthright now. Esau said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentils too, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
Thank you. Oops. All right.
So you see here, Esau gave up his birthright. Now we read in Hebrews 12:16 talks about this incident. It says, and it calls Esau godless, unholy, profane for what he did. It says, see that no one is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance right as the oldest son. So he had a right as the oldest son. So let's see, what did Esau actually give up? When you say birthright, we need to understand what that means in context, right? So there's two parts to birthright. And go back to the culture then, the traditions then, and in that context, what does birthright mean? So there's two parts to it. One is a material part of it. Now, materially, the firstborn would receive a double portion as all the other children. So, for example, if a father has a piece of land and there's two sons, the land would be split into three, not two. Three. And the firstborn would get two, and the second would get one. So it was inheritance in terms of property was divided in that 2:1 ratio. The older got a double. So that's one part of it, which he gave up. He said, okay, fine, I don't care. The next is also the spiritual part of it. So in the culture, birthright also had a spiritual weight to it. Now, before the Levites came into picture and Moses and all of that, 10 Commandments, uh, it was the head of the family who would serve as the priest in worshiping Yahweh and the family worshiping. The head of the family was responsible for the family worshiping God. And uh, it would be the firstborn son who would take that mantle up, right, as continuing the worship on behalf of the family to God, to Yahweh. And this specific family had a unique special promise, right? They were a chosen family, that the Messiah would come from that family. That was the promise, right? Now Abraham knew that. It was revealed to Abraham and probably to Isaac as well. So this is the other part of it as well. So these two parts. So when Esau was saying that I choose this food, nice hot food in front of me, what he was actually saying is, I don't care so much about the land that I'm going to get, my father's property, and I don't care so much about being the ancestor of the Messiah. I care more about this nice, hot, tasty food that is in front of me. Right? And that's the reason the Bible says he's unholy. Because if you look at it, it was God's promise, a very, very heavy thing. Right? And he wasn't realizing the value of it. And that in God's eyes was serious. Now we have to bear in mind one thing. When uh, when Rebecca received this prophecy, it was a prophecy of how things are going to happen, right? It probably doesn't mean that uh, Isaac doesn't have any right at all, right? If Isaac was following God, if Isaac was seeking God, he may have been the one, right? But God has foreknowledge. He prophesies what's going to happen. Now, it probably doesn't mean that Esau hated all of this, that he hated the land and all of this. It just shows his, uh, what he valued more. And something that was right in front of him. And this is something that now gets uh, relevant for us as well. Something that was in front of his eyes, something that his hands could reach and touch right here, right now, was more valuable to him than something that he would see years down the line. And for him, this was more valuable, right? And what is his decision making there? What's affecting his decision making process? Yeah. So his problem was this: he had a short-sighted view that valued something temporary over something eternal, something sacred or blessed. So there's this eternal perspective versus the earthly perspective, right? So if you can just turn to Colossians chapter 3, verse 2. This is what it says there.
It says, set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. So in Colossians, we speak about this. There are two places you can set your eyes on, right? There's two options. One on things above, two on earthly things. Now, Esau's problem was that he set his eyes on earthly things, food in this case. It could be anything. It could be career, it could be entertainment, it could be uh, pleasure, it could be hobbies, it could be anything at all, right? Now, let's go a little deeper into this mindset, right, to understand this mindset better. Now, Esau says here, so imagine this scene, okay? Esau's coming in, he's tired, he's coming from the field, he's probably hunting or something like that. Jacob has already made this nice, tasty curry, and he sees that, he gets the aroma, he gets the smell, and he says, okay, give it to me. Now, Esau says something very interesting. He says that, I am about to die. What use is a birthright? Now, think about it. Was he really about to die? You think so? No, right? Why did he feel he was going to die? You see, there's an interesting thing here that shapes our decision making. Now, because his perspective was short-sighted, for him, the problem in front of him was much bigger than it really was. Or the temptation that was in front of him was much more lucrative than what it really was. Right? Now, if he had an eternal perspective, if his sight was a little longer, then he would see the size of this in the right proportion. Right? He would see this is actually a very small thing. Fine. I can wait half an hour for my meal. No problem. I'm not going to die. So when our perspective, it all depends on our perspective, right? That's what the word perspective means. Right? Is my perspective this much? Is my perspective there? Is my perspective much beyond? Now our perspective can shape the logic we use in decision making. It can, really can. And this is an example of that. Esau had a logic to it, right? I'm going to die. If I die, my birthright is no use to me. Therefore, I should choose this stew. Very sound logic. The only problem is the assumption was wrong, right? He wasn't going to die. Now, if we have an earthly perspective to life, and this is again something like the fear versus faith, this is the earthly versus eternal perspective. It's something that we carry every day. Situations keep coming at our workplace, in our families, when we deal with our children, when we deal with our family members, deal with our colleagues, our boss, when we take decisions about um, the job we take or the place we move to, who we marry, we take even smaller decisions, right? In how we choose to spend our time for the next few hours, right? All of this, our perspective can influence the logic our mind uses to reach a conclusion. And we can be very convinced about our logic, but if our perspective is wrong, we end up at the wrong conclusion. Now, Paul wrote this to the Philippians, Philippians 3:19. Can one of you please read that? Very, very, very important. It talks about this mindset, and picture Paul as he's writing this. He's in fact pleading to the Philippians because it's something so important. Yeah, if you can read Philippians 3:19.
Whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their mind on earthly things.
Yeah. So the verse before that, he says, now I tell you again with tears in my eyes. That's the way Paul is telling them. With tears in his eyes. So he's begging them, he's pleading them and saying, their God is their stomach. They take pride in things they should be ashamed of. All they think are about the things of this world. In the end, they will be destroyed. Sometimes we get so worked up about not getting a promotion, not getting a hike, about the way our manager spoke to us, somebody else getting a promotion instead of me. We get very, very worked up. It's very natural. We've all been there, right? We get upset. We come home, pass that back to our children or to our family, and they get upset. a lot of things can happen, right? All of this is to do with our perspective. It doesn't really matter if I get a promotion or actually, right? If you look at it from a little longer perspective, God, and if we choose to put our trust in God rather than ourselves. All right, so that's what we can learn from Esau. The question is, what shapes your decision making? What what shapes the logic you use for your decision making? And that's our perspective, earthly versus eternal, is a key factor in shaping that decision. So we've seen two factors so far. Fear can shape our decision making. Fear versus faith shapes the logic. Our perspective shapes the logic of our decision making, right? So uh, every day, every decision, big or small, these are things that we don't realize, but they shape our thinking and our thought process. All right, we move now to Jacob. Okay, so far? Am I going too fast? No? Too slow? Hopefully not. We're on track. Don't worry. All right, Jacob. Uh, what does the word Jacob mean? Deceiver. Yeah, so it really literally means heel holder. So because when they came out of Rebecca's womb, Jacob was holding on to the heel of Esau. And it means heel holder, literally, but what it figuratively means at that time is that somebody who's trying to pull somebody else down, right? Through deception, through scheming, pull somebody else down in order to go ahead, right? Uh, and that's how he was named. Uh, Now, names, often we see in the Bible, names portray the person's character also, right? So Jacob really was that. It wasn't just a name. He was a deceiver. He was a person who uh, tried to grab things that didn't belong to him, even by whatever means possible. Now, in chapter 27, verse 36, Esau says something very interesting that captures this. Genesis 27:36. What does it say there? Yeah. Esau says this, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. So Esau confirms that. You named him very appropriately. He is definitely a deceiver, a cheater, and he's cheated me of these two very important things. Now, in the passage that we just read for Esau before, Jacob knew Esau's weakness for food. Right? And when an opportunity came along, it wasn't a planned opportunity, of course, I'm sure he had it in his mind, but when the right opportunity came along, he used Esau's weakness against him and to grab something that was so important, right? He didn't care about what the custom was. He didn't care about what Isaac thought. He said, I want it, right? It's something that looks very nice. I'm going to take it somehow or the other. And later on, and we'll read this when we look at Rebecca as well, in chapter 27, we see that his second deception was even worse, where he goes and lies to his father, Isaac himself. That's where Isaac is going to bless his firstborn. Isaac wants to bless Esau. And Jacob, he lies to his father. He deceives his father. He even uses the name of God as part of the lie. Isaac asked him, how did you come back so fast after catching some animal? He said, oh, God was with me and he helped me, right? He brings God also into his lie. So that's how he'll do anything. Like the end justifies the means. Right? So his go-to attitude, right? Uh, what is go-to attitude? Go-to attitude is a person's default attitude in times of pressure or difficulty. When pressed against the wall, what is my default attitude? What comes out then is what really is deep within, right? When everything is okay, you see, there's this interesting thing. Uh, People in the West often they look at India and people might say, "Oh, they're in India. They fight for things. They don't stand in a queue. They're very uncultured." But there was this article I was reading some years back during the COVID times when shortage for the first time hit the West. They've never seen shortage before. And many of you would have read this. People were fighting like crazy over the smallest of things, even tissue paper, right? And there was also this place where there was a flood, and there was one boat going, and it was a news article that they were not letting others get into that boat to be saved from that flood. In India, things would have been very different, right? You know, but there they were like, to safeguard themselves, they were hitting people who were trying to get into that life-saving boat. So you see, people, when put under pressure, when there is scarcity, that's when people's true nature comes out. So what is the it's interesting if we can find out what is your and my go-to attitude or default attitude when pushed against the wall. How are you going to react uh, when things are not all very nice, right? See, I always tell myself, people can stand in a, there's no problem to stand in a queue if you know that 2 minutes later another bus is going to come. But if you know that the next bus is after 2 hours, you will not stand in a queue. You will fight to get into this, right? So there is a difference in conditions that shapes how people respond and react to situations. All right. So what was Jacob's go-to attitude? Right? He was relying on himself. He was relying on his schemes, right, to get what he wants. Right? If he felt that he needed something, uh, that was his default attitude. Now let's look at Rebecca also, because Jacob and Rebecca have similar attitudes. Similar to Jacob, Rebecca also used manipulation to get things done the way she wants and when she wants. Uh, let's read this portion, it's a slightly longer portion. Uh, One of you can read this, Genesis chapter 27, verses from 5 to 25. This is a very interesting portion. Um, as we read this, we see how Jacob and Rebecca behaved. And as we go through this, try to look at what is their go-to attitude uh, or behavior. And so rather than trusting God, Rebecca chooses to do things her own way. So yeah, can one of you please read verses 5 to 25?
Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau his son. And Esau went to the field to hunt game and to bring it. So Rebekah spoke to Jacob her son, saying, Indeed, I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, Bring me game and make savory food for me, that I may eat it and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go now to the flock and bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats, and I will make savory food from them for your father such as he loves. Then you shall take it to your father, that he may eat it, and that he may bless you before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Look, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. But his mother said to him, Let your curse be upon me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get them for me. And he went and got them and brought them to his mother. And his mother made savory food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the choice clothes of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave the savory food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. So he went to his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done just as you told me. Please arise, sit, eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because the Lord your God brought it to me. Isaac said to Jacob, Please come near me, that I may feel you, my son. whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. Then he said, are you really my son Esau? He said, I am. He said, bring it near me, and I will eat of my son's game, so that my soul may bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank.
Um, so we read after that, soon after that, we read that he gives his blessing to Jacob. Yeah? So it's a lot of manipulation happening here, right? Multiple levels of manipulation and scheming from both Rebecca. Rebecca is the mastermind. Jacob's executing it very well. It's a very good team they form, right? Um, and they get what they want. They get the blessing, because after Esau comes and says, please give some blessing to me as well. And Isaac says, sorry, there's nothing left for you. I've given the blessing, and I was part of the blessing is also, whoever curses you shall be cursed. So Isaac can't even curse Jacob anymore, right? So they got what they wanted, right? Now there's a similar, if you look at another person, David. David had received a prophecy that from God that he's going to get the kingdom. And there was this moment when Saul was with David in the cave, and David could have chosen to take a shortcut and just kill Saul there very easily, right? Uh, help God fulfill his promise. But David's response was not that. David didn't do that. David said, far be it from me, because Saul is a person who was chosen by God. I'm not going to do this. If God has promised it, he will make it happen at the right time, right? And God fulfilled it at the right time. Now, in this case also, Rebecca had received this prophecy. She could have just trusted God that Jacob, that Esau is going to serve Jacob, and the right is going to um, go to Jacob. But she didn't. She went to these great lengths to get it done. Now, what do we learn about her behaviors? One interesting thing is her brother Laban also had the same attitude, right? So after some time, we'll see next week, Jacob goes and gets deceived and manipulated by Rebecca's brother, right? So full circle of life, right? Uh, so what was her behavior? Now, she didn't trust God, right? Obviously, she felt the need to be in control of every situation, of everything. Things should happen the way I want it, when I want it, right? How I want it. Now that's a dangerous attitude to have, because then I'd try to get that done, however, right? Whatever it takes. But that also means that I am choosing not to trust God in situations with my life, with my plans. Now, sometimes we may have plans for our life. We may have certain aspirations for our life. Uh, and we may strive like Jacob, or we may scheme and manipulate like Rebecca to say, I have to get this done. This is where I want to be after so many years. I've had friends uh, who've told me way back, even at the start of my career, that 15 years from now, I remember very well, this colleague of mine, he told me, 15 years from now, I want to be a director. I want to be doing this, and this. I was like, how do you have so much clarity? Wow. Now, I wish I also had this much clarity. And at that time, I was wishing that I had this much of clarity as him. I said, I have no clue what I want to do 2 years from now, right? But people have plans, and all of us may have plans in different areas of our lives. Uh, but where is God in all of that? Right? As we saw before, in our decision making, our perspective influences the way we think. And where is God in all of that? Where is trust in all of that? So her attitude was very, very similar to Jacob's. Jacob was to strive by his strength. Rebecca's was to manipulate, make things happen. A lack of trust
that God was sovereign over their lives. Right? They didn't trust enough that God was sovereign. Uh, so with this, we've looked at these four characters. Oh yeah, by the way, what was the result of whatever Rebecca did? She got what she wanted, but because of that, Jacob had to flee because now Esau wanted to kill Jacob. He ran away, spent 20 years there in Laban. Rebecca did not see Jacob anymore after that. Right? The Bible doesn't say that she ever saw her. She died before that. So, because of all of that, there was a fight between the brothers. The family was split up. She never saw her favorite son anymore. There was a lot of consequence. So, though she got what she wanted or what she thought she needed, it wasn't really the right thing. What we'll do now is so we've looked at a few attitudes, we looked at a few uh, perspectives. Uh, we'll quickly go a little deeper into that as we conclude to see what are some other go-to attitudes or default behaviors that other people in the Bible had, right? So that we can look at ourselves. And through all of this, we want to be able to introspect and ask ourselves, what is my default behavior, right? And that is something that we can then place before God if it's something that we need to. We need to. So here's a list of. So I have two slides. Okay, a list of 8 different behavior or default behaviors. We'll quickly look at this, and as we do that, uh, be open to whatever God may speak to us. Right? Now, Rebecca, we saw that the attitude type. So there's the attitude type. I hope this is visible. Maybe not so much at the back, but there's attitude type, who this is from, what is the internal thinking, what is the default behavior, and what is the real root problem there. So Rebecca had the attitude type of being a manipulator. The internal thinking was, I need to make this happen somehow, right? Like we just saw. And what behavior did it cause? The behavior it produced was half-truths, manipulation, deceiving people, controlling outcomes. Wanting to always control situations is part of this. What is the root problem? It is a lack of trust in God's ability, God's timing, God's sovereignty. Right? It's a very deep-rooted lack of trust. The next one, Jacob, he was a hustler. He was trying to do things himself. What was his mantra? If I don't grab it by myself, I'm going to miss out. Right? I should pull somebody down, I should go get it. Otherwise, I'm not going to get it. What is the behavior that produces? It forces outcomes, right? And sometimes even if it means climbing over others, stepping over others, right? This sometimes happens at the workplace, right? What is the root? Again, a lack of trust in God as provider, lack of trust that God is sovereign. So both of them, it's a lack of trust. The third one, if you look at the life of Jonah, this is a rebel, an attitude type of rebel. The mantra is, I know what's best for me, right? I know the path that is best for me. And this is not very uncommon, right? We sometimes find ourselves in this, and sometimes, our mantra may not be one single one here, right? There may be different ones of this that comes and hits us at different times. Where we say, I know what's right for me. I know the decisions to make. I trust my thought process. But as we saw earlier, our thought process can be influenced by various factors. All right, so what does this cause? It causes the person to do what I feel best, irrespective of what God wants, irrespective of God's timing. What is the root problem? It's a desire for complete control over one's destiny. The fourth, this is a victim attitude. King Saul is a good example, where when he offered the sacrifice, instead of waiting for Samuel, Samuel comes and confronts him and says, why did you do this? Also, when uh, he went to conquer this place, and then God had told him to completely destroy the place, but he didn't. Right? He took some things. His response was to blame others. Right? Always shifting the blame on others or on circumstances. It's not my fault. They did this. That's why I did this. They said this. That's why I did this. Right? What is the problem there? The problem is a need to maintain a perfect public image. Like if you look at the problem really within, I can't accept a mistake because I have to present myself as perfect before others, right? That's a problem. So then I can't accept a mistake. I can't be gracious about it. I can't say sorry. I can't correct myself. There's this urge to always look perfect and right. Now that's very dangerous. That's something that can be changed. God can transform us. But all of these things affect the way we take decisions, affect the way we behave and react to people. All right? The next one is aggressor. And Cain is a good example there, where the mantra is, I will eliminate whoever makes me feel inferior. And the behavior is using anger, using shouting, to shout others down when threatened. Right? Um, so people who may have a, a short temper, and if somebody says something to challenge them or to threaten them, they start getting very, they very defensive. They start shouting. Um, the root problem is a feeling of entitlement, that I'm entitled to this. There could be other roots also there, but not going into too much there. But this is another default behavior, a go-to attitude. The next one is a legalist. Pharisees are a good example here. So this is where the thinking is, I'm safe as long as I check every box, right? And I look perfect. Behavior is focusing on other people's faults and other people's rule breaking so that nobody really looks at my own heart. I keep finding fault with others. I keep saying, oh, you're not good enough. But actually, and I have a self-righteous outlook to things, I may be very hollow inside. I may be very broken inside. But outwardly, this is how it is. And the root there is self-righteousness. And I might feel good about the fact that I'm ticking all the boxes. I'm going to church every Sunday. I'm reading the Bible every day. Tick, tick, tick. But there might be a very deep-rooted problem inside. That's self-righteousness. The next one is people-pleaser attitude. Now, Aaron, at the instance of the golden calf, right, when Moses was up on the mountain, his thinking was, if I keep people happy, I'm safe. And the behavior that comes out of this is changing the stance according to people around. Uh, so again, the problem really here is that I value human approval more than I value God's. And therefore, I'm not willing to take a stand against somebody. I'm not willing to confront. I just kind of say, okay, good. I do things to please people, whether it's in the workplace or the boss or whoever. Right? That is also a problem. And finally, we see an attitude which is the right attitude. Now, Joseph is a good example of a right attitude, of an overcomer attitude, where his thinking was God is in control, even if it doesn't feel that way. Even if the situation feels terrible, God is still in control. He believed that. So he was in the prison for around 14 years, wrongly condemned into prison. He didn't get bitter. He didn't get bitter against God or discouraged. He said, God is in control. And God was in control, right? The default behavior then becomes doing the right thing, depending on God's strength, not my own strength, on God's timing, not my timing, God's plan, not mine. And the root there is a trust in God and also having an eternal perspective. So this goes back to the two things that we saw earlier from Esau and Isaac about trusting God. The faith was his fear, and the having an eternal perspective. These are two very fundamental things that shape our not just our decision making, but also our behavior and our go-to attitude. Right. So it's important for us really to now if we can relate to any of these 8 things that we go to attitudes that we saw here, then that's something that God can
change. We're not fixed with that for life. And you see these people that we looked at today, we saw how broken they were, right? But they were people chosen by God. God still chose them, God used them, and they executed God's plans. God doesn't need perfect people. We don't have to make ourselves perfect before we go to God. But God says, you come as you are, and I will make you perfect. Right? Sometimes some of these attitudes can prevent us really from going to God also with our imperfections. Sometimes this attitude of wanting to look good on the outside, right? The legalist thing can prevent us from going to God in our brokenness and our weakness and say, God, I'm broken. I keep falling all the time. I have these problems. My attitude isn't right. I've been living with perhaps an earthly perspective. I've allowed fear into my life. I struggle with this, or other things that I struggle with. And we go to God and say, God, can you help me? Can you change me? And God does, because that's what God wants. He wants us to go to Him as we are, and then He helps us shape that. Wouldn't it be wonderful if our, every day, our thought process, our decision making could all be in that right frame of mind where we know then that this is God's plan. You know, the things we speak, the things we do, how we spend our time, every little thing, it would really change the way we live our lives itself, right? Uh, so in closing, I'd just like to say that if God has spoken to any of us in any particular aspect of the many things that we looked at today, can you set aside any barrier that may prevent you from going to God? Um, Whatever it may be, maybe things that we've been accustomed to from the past. Can we just come before God and submit ourselves to God's hands and say, God, can you shape me? Can you shape my behaviors? Can you shape my thinking? Can you shape my perspectives? Yeah. Uh, so if God has spoken to you, you can just you can you can either stand up or kneel down or take some step to because we remember this. The step is not for God. The step is because we remember that yes, I did take a step. I did take a decision then over there that week. So you can just stand up or you can kneel down. You can do anything. You can raise your hands. You can do as you feel led, and we can pray together. Yeah. I'll just request Rakesh to come and pray for us on this.